Hello everyone and welcome to Fiction Friday. Today we have episode 18 of The Squire. I hope you enjoy it.
How far do you think until we reach the border? Rain asked for the third time. He knew she was eager to end this little ordeal, but if she asked one more time, Cole feared he might lose his temper. Best guess between 30 and 40 miles. 2 days if we set a good pace. He jumped over a log, then reached back to help Rain. They were making good time despite the thick forest. Does anyone live around here? Beats me. Since Kenton fell into chaos following the Beastman invasion 80 years ago, we've had little contact with the people here beyond the occasional border raid. I hope we can avoid the locals, as odds are anyone we meet will want to rob and kill us. Charming. Is this what will happen to Corinthia? Not if I can help it. They continued on in comfortable silence for the next few hours. He figured they had covered about 6 miles when Rain said, "I'm hungry." Me too. Cole found a small clearing and set his pack down. Most of their provisions had been ruined in the lake. The sole surviving bit of food was some jerky they got in Pike's Cove that came wrapped in a water-resistant cloth. It was a little damp, but edible. He handed her a couple of strips and took a pair for himself. Cole finished his first strip and was starting on the second when a long howl echoed through the forest. He recognized that howl. It sounded the same as the wolfmen that had chased them from the castle. He got up and slung his pack over his shoulder. Rain looked at him, eyes wide, lip trembling. They found us again. Yeah, sounds like they're 3-4 miles back. The Darkcaster must have sent them to the boat. They've got our scent now. What do we do? Cole helped her up. We run and keep our eyes open. Maybe we can find somewhere to make a stand. What if we can't? Best not to think about that. Come on. They set out at a ground-devouring jog that Cole could maintain for hours, and he hoped Rain could manage. Wherever Cole found rocks jutting up out of the ground, he ran across them to confuse their trail. They even ran a couple 100 yards down a brook. Every trick Cole had learned they used, to no avail. The howls kept getting closer. Cole stopped short when they crossed a well-worn trail. Rain gasped for breath while he bent down to examine the tracks. No animal made them. Men used this path, often too. Cole bit his lip as a desperate plan formed. Another howl, this one only a mile behind them, convinced Cole to go for it. Where does this lead? Rain asked when they turned down the trail. To help, I hope. You said we should avoid the locals. We should, but I prefer to take my chances with humans than beastmen. They jogged down the trail for 10 minutes, meeting no one. Cole feared he may have miscalculated when 3 men with crossbows stepped out on the path. 2 more appeared behind them. The bandits must have set up blinds. Cole had run right past them without noticing. "Throw down that sword and your packs," said the man in the center directly ahead of them. "Do as you're told and you might live a little longer." Cole did as the bandit bid without complaint. The howls had stopped. That meant the wolfmen were close and they didn't want to alert their prey. They just needed to survive a little longer. "What are you two doing here?" the leader asked. "We're refugees, my sister and I. We're trying to escape the war in Corinthia. I hoped we might find somewhere safe here in Kenton." The bandits laughed. "What's happening in Corinthia that you thought Kenton would be safer?" "Beastmen attacked. The capital has fallen and Rel burned shortly after. It seems we've been running from monsters for weeks. Just seeing a human face, even one aiming a crossbow at me, is welcome." The leader's expression softened. "It's that bad?" "Yes, sir. We lost our parents, many friends, our home. All we have left is these few items, the clothes on our backs and each other." Cole noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. The wolfmen were working their way into position. "Please, sir. We're both hard workers. All we want is a safe place to live." "You know how to use that sword, boy?" "Yes, sir. My father taught me." Branches crunched and snarling wolfmen surged out of the undergrowth. The bandits swung to deal with the new threat. Crossbows thunked and hungry snarls turned to howls of pain. Cole recovered his sword and tried to figure out where the worst threat lay. A bandit went down under the claws and fangs of a wolfman. The rest of the bandits tossed their spent crossbows and drew an assortment of rusty swords and axes. They fought well, but the wolfmen had size and surprise on their side. A second bandit went down under a wolfman who died a moment later, when 2 of the surviving bandits ran it through on both sides. Cole watched the 3 humans face down 2 beastmen. It appeared they'd all forgotten about Cole and Rain. "We should run," Rain whispered. Cole shook his head. They couldn't run. He needed to finish this now. Both sides seemed reluctant to attack for fear of leaving themselves exposed. That wouldn't last. The wolfmen's savage nature would compel them to attack no matter the odds. Sure enough, as soon as the thought went through his mind, the wolfmen surged ahead, trying to overwhelm the bandits with raw strength. The humans hacked and slashed while the wolfmen bit and clawed. Cole pulled Rain against his chest. She didn't need to watch the slaughter. It didn't last long. In less than a minute, all the combatants lay bleeding on the ground. "Stay here, Princess." Cole left Rain facing away from the massacre and moved closer. One of the wolfmen still drew breath, so Cole ran it through and twisted his sword. The other one had at least a dozen deep cuts in its hide. 2 of the bandits had also succumbed to their wounds, but the leader remained alive. "You led them to us." The bandit coughed up blood. He must have a punctured lung. Cole nodded. "I couldn't take 5 beastmen on my own. When I crossed your trail, I hoped it would lead me to a bandit group. Thank you for your help." "You killed us as surely as those monsters." "Consider it my good deed for the day." Cole rested his blade across the bandit's throat and yanked it across. A cleaner death than the man deserved, but he didn't want to risk someone finding him alive. Cole cleaned his sword and found a sheath on a dead bandit that almost fit. He liberated it. The idea of stealing from a bandit brought a smile to his face. He collected their packs and rejoined Rain. "It's done." He handed her a pack and slung his over his shoulder. "Ready?" "More than ready." No line in the dirt marked the border between Kenton and Celestia, but when they reached a well-maintained road 2 days after the battle with the wolfmen, Cole figured they'd crossed over. They followed the road at an easy walk, feeling safe for the first time in a long while. Cole hoped it would last. "Where are all the people?" Rain asked. "I doubt we'll find any villages this close to the border. Too much risk of bandits. My best guess is this road leads to one of their border forts. Celestia built 6 of them not long after Kenton fell." Rain smiled and shook her head. "It never ceases to amaze me how much you know. If anything, I should be the one to tell you about that sort of thing, but I knew nothing about any forts. We studied all defensive positions used by all the Lake Kingdoms. The theory was if we could figure out what worked and what didn't, we'd use the good stuff and ignore the rest. Didn't help much. No one allowed for the possibility that the enemy could just appear anywhere and any time. Pretty hard to defend against that." The clink of armor reached them before they saw the source. 12 mail-clad soldiers carrying spears, swords belted at their waists, and shields slung from their backs, marching in a neat column down the road. They looked like they knew how to use their weapons. Cole kept his hands well clear of his sword. Even if they didn't have him outnumbered, these didn't look like the sort of men he'd want to fight. The soldiers spotted them and double-timed it in their direction. They formed a semicircle across the road. Cole didn't recognize their insignia, but he assumed the man that stepped forward was in command. "Speak and be recognized." "I'm Cole, the last surviving Squire of Corinthia and bodyguard to Princess Rain, sole heir to the throne. We seek sanctuary." "You two hardly look the part. Your amulet." Cole removed both his bronze squire's amulet and the gold amulet Sir Garrus had given him and let them hang on his chest. "Please, sir, we've been running, dodging beastmen and bandits for weeks." The commander frowned. "What's a squire doing with a knight's amulet?" "He probably stole it," one of the soldiers said. Cole bristled, but fought down the urge to argue. They would either accept his story or throw them both in a cell. Either way, he couldn't fight his way past them. "Probably best if I relieve you of that boy." The commander reached for Sir Garrus's amulet. The moment his fingers touched it, a crackle of golden light sparked. He jerked his hand back and rubbed it. The soldiers leveled their spears. "A knight's amulet can't be taken," Cole said. "Only given." The officer met his gaze and nodded. "We'll escort you to the palace. It's a ways, but we can get horses at the fort. I'm Lieutenant Miles. Sorry about that." He pointed at the amulet around Cole's throat. "But I had to be sure." No harm done. Cole held out a hand and they shook. Rain slumped against his back. We made it. We're finally safe. Miles bowed. You certainly are, Highness. Welcome to Celestia. Cole's mare pranced and he fought to get her under control. Miles insisted she was the calmest horse in the fort stable, but Cole doubted it. She certainly didn't have the brains of his little pinto. The mare settled and he patted her neck. They'd ridden for 3 days, but the mare still didn't seem to trust him. He felt the same about her. Rain laughed beside him. So we finally found something you're not good at. Cole shrugged. I've been riding for a few years, but I never got comfortable at it. I prefer to fight on my own 2 feet rather than depend on an animal's goodwill. Not a very knightly sentiment? I suppose not. They rode through Celestia, a beautiful country of rolling hills, farms, and forests. It wasn't much different from home, save for a distinct lack of marauding beastmen. It felt like forever since Cole had relaxed and enjoyed a moment's peace. Riding through the countryside, surrounded by soldiers, he allowed the muscles in his back to relax. How much farther to the capital? Rain asked Lieutenant Miles. It should be in sight by midday and will arrive before dark tonight. Rain sighed. I can't wait for a proper bath. As Miles predicted, a little after noon they topped a hill and settled down in a valley. A river running through the center of it was the Celestial City. The city sprawled along the river with no sign that the designers gave any consideration to defense. They had no wall or other visible protection. The palace nestled in the center like a jeweled egg in a nest. Even from a distance, Cole saw gleaming towers, green gardens, and little streams running all over the grounds. It made a marked difference from the impressive but more utilitarian Feingold Castle. Where do the soldiers live? Cole saw nothing that looked like a barracks on the castle grounds. You can't see it from here, but on the opposite side of the palace is the army barracks. Several thousand soldiers live only seconds from the palace, and at any given moment 200 patrol the grounds. It's beautiful. Rain stared at the sparkling city, enraptured. Father used to say Corinthia was the strongest of the Lake Kingdoms, but after seeing this, I think he may have exaggerated. Cole smiled. What could her father have said? That Corinthia was, at best, the second strongest kingdom? He said what he had to as ruler, but Cole suspected the king knew full well that Celestia was the strongest. They rode into the city at sunset, red and purple gleaming in 1,000 windows. All the buildings looked clean and well cared for. Everything about the city screamed wealth. They hadn't gone far when a patrol of men in blue tabards approached. The commander of what Cole assumed was a watch patrol exchanged greetings with Lieutenant Miles, and they were soon on their way again. They passed several street vendors selling food or trinkets. Unlike any other city Cole had visited, the vendors didn't shout at them as they passed. Either they knew better than to bother the soldiers or were more polite than the merchants back home. An arched stone bridge crossed the river and led up to the palace. 6 men in mail carrying halberds stopped them a few feet from a massive set of double doors. Speak and be recognized, the guard commander said. Lieutenant Miles, Border Patrol, escorting refugees to the palace to meet with the king and queen. The guard commander looked at Cole, then Rain, then back to Miles. And why would their majesties want to meet with 2 refugees? The young lady is Princess Rain of Corinthia, and the young man is Squire Cole of the Knights of Corinthia. I suspect their majesties will wish to speak with them. What about you? The commander looked at Cole and Rain again, this time with a good deal more respect. I suspect you're right. This has certainly been our week for Corinthian refugees.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Fiction Friday. If you liked what you heard, you can find more of my fiction on my website, jamesewisher.com. Please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with anyone else you think might enjoy the show. Until next week, goodbye.